Welcome to the California Nevada chat on January 17th. This is our first of 2025. So welcome back. No, we haven't been together since November. So thanks for joining us this morning. We've got another great lineup for you. My name is Nikki Gatch. I'm the Executive Director of the Southern California PGA. And on behalf of our president, Dr. Allison Kurt, as well as our colleagues from the Northern California PGA section, President Nick Bailey and Executive Director Caitlin Doyle, we welcome you. Before we begin today, I'd really just like to take a minute here just to reflect on what a tough week it's been here in Southern California with all the fires. Obviously, we're not out of the weeds yet. First responders still fighting the battle. Unfortunately, some of our own PGA professionals have been impacted with this. Some losing their homes completely, some still evacuated and don't know the status of their homes, and some that might be out of work for a while. So we've only had one facility experience extreme devastation. That's the Altadena Golf Course, which was right in the middle of the Eaton fire. They lost their clubhouse or they experienced quite a bit of damage to the golf course. So that is one facility that will be closed for unforeseen time. And unfortunately, those employees, might be out of work for a while. Many other courses in the area experienced some damage, trees down, lots of debris with the high winds that we saw. But most are up now, open, still completing the cleanup phase. So that's positive. There are many resources available to assist. I know we feel so helpless. We want to help. We want to help our community. We want to help our fellow PGA professionals that have faced some challenges. So we've created a resource page. The SCGA has created one as well. So I encourage you to visit scpga.com and reference our wildfire resource page to learn how you might be able to help. And whether that's donating directly to the PGA Disaster Relief Fund, sending in gift cards to be distributed to those in need, or perhaps donating a lesson with the proceeds going back to support those in need. So different options and opportunities for everyone that does want to help. We all need to come together at this time. We appreciate everyone's support and concern. Daily, we get texts and phone calls and emails just checking in. So we do appreciate it. I know those that have been directly affected appreciate it as well. So please keep all those folks in your thoughts and prayers. So thank you. At this time, I'd like to welcome Caitlin Doyle from the Northern California section. Caitlin, any opening comments you'd like to share?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, good morning. Happy Friday. And thanks, Nikki, for that. And we're certainly in constant communication about the fires and definitely thinking of you and happy to support in any way we can. So appreciate that call out for our NorCal members as well. But we once again have some great speakers lined up for all of you. So this morning we have Tyler Dennis, who's the Chief Competitions Officer for the PGA Tour. Excuse me, a lot of C's. And then we also have joining us to give our legislative updates is the Public Affairs Consultant for the SCGA and the California Alliance for Golf, Craig Kessler. So we're first going to kind of start with Tyler. So I know, Tyler, you are down in La Quinta right now, right at the Amex. So that is exciting, but wanted to really kick it off with a question of, there's been a lot of changes at the PGA Tour over the last several years. What has been the biggest driver of that change? And do you see a trickle-down effect from the pro level to recreational golf?
Yeah. Well, hey everybody, good morning and thanks for letting me join here. I'm happy to get to that question. I just do want to say a couple things to start off. Just to echo about the tragedy that, in Southern California, our whole PJ Tour family is just wholly focused on thinking about it. It's we're here this week, but California is so important to the PGA Tour, and we're really going to be leaning into all of this as the final devastation and so forth becomes apparent, because golf special that way. I think everybody on this call knows that it's, at the heart of what we do is charity and rebuilding and so forth. So I'm sure we'll talk about the Genesis Invitational, the news we had yesterday a little later, but just to say that we're really, really focused on it here at the American Express this week. American Express and the tournament are already doing things here in Southern California. The other thing I want to just say is just how important the PGA uh, of America, the PGA sections, and the all of the members are to us. I mean, we're really deeply connected in many, many ways, and it's so deeply connected that oftentimes you sort of forget about it. But the PGA members are in our world every day, the places we play, running qualifying, Q school. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but just also the all of our membership. I mean, all of the coaching and the sort of pipeline of what the PGA Tour is really comes from all of you on the phone and around the country. So it's just deeply connected to us. We try to make as close a connection as we can every week, and so I just wanted to come out and say that. And to your question, I'll just dive in. Yeah, we've the changes that I think you're referring to really are what was announced about 6 weeks ago, coming out of the PGA Tour board meeting in November, and it was really a holistic look at the PGA Tour eligibility structure, how you become a member of the tour, how you get on the tour. It does have some effects on open qualifying. I don't think any of these sections are affected, but there are some PGA sections we're working with that are seeing some changes to how they run qualifiers. But at the heart of it, really what it was, for those of you who follow the kind of ins and outs of the weeds of the tour, is as we've evolved the schedule over the last few years. We've gone back to a calendar year season. The January to August timeframe is really the most important sort of run up to get into the FedEx Cup playoffs. And for the FedEx Cup, something that's really important to our members, we introduced the signature event model, which is sort of that heightened level of events within that season. But all along the way, we never really changed how the eligibility and access and membership worked. And our players, going back to mid last year, said, you know what, we're getting to a point where you get a PGA Tour card as a young person or coming off the Corn Ferry Tour as a Q school, but it doesn't mean as much as it once did. You're not getting into tournaments. You're having a really uphill battle. It needs to be a more equal playing field between the new players that can get onto the tour and if they're good enough, overtake the existing players. And it kicked off a big change where we basically reworked the size of our membership. We've reduced the number of exempt players that keep their cards from the long time 125 down to 100. We modified the Corn Ferry Tour access category so that it's a little bit smaller, but they get in every tournament, every full field event. And then kind of a laundry list of changes. One of the ones was really having to do with taking a hard look at the field sizes that we have every week, and having to look ourselves in the mirror and basically say we're not finishing a bunch of events. In fact, all the events that we play out here in California, oftentimes Thursday, Friday, we're not finishing. We had too many players. So we made some small tweaks to those. And part of that was adjusting our amount of open qualifying access. So there's going to be a few events early on next year that aren't going to have open qualifying, something that's really important to those sections that we're working with them on. There's going to be others that have only 2 spots versus 4 spots. But the overall real effect of this is to focus on getting the pipeline of players that have shown the best chance of, becoming that next generation of stars, onto the tour. So it's kind of way in the weeds, like I said, to use a term, but it's been an important kind of final piece of our evolution to maintain as much access as we can, but make sure that the best players are getting onto the tour.
That's great. Appreciate you walking us through that and explaining. Tell us about the new initiative, the Fan Forward initiative, and how that kind of trickles down to the amateur golfers and the recreational golfers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so this thing we're calling Fan Forward. Nikki, is a project that's probably going to last for years to come, and it's actually pretty related to what I just talked about of looking, looking at the PGA Tour and saying what is the best version of the PGA Tour, and you have to start with the fan. The world of sports is changing rapidly. The way people consume sports, the media landscape is changing. We've had this, divisiveness in the game with the onset of live golf and some of the players choosing to go do that. And so there's a lot of things going on, and we want to make sure we're listening to the fans. And we have kicked off this Fan Forward initiative, which is a really deep dive into what our fans think, and it's really fascinating. We really kicked it off in earnest at the end of last year. We've done a few waves of research, and I think you're going to see things pop out of it across different categories. You're going to be like, what is the PGA Tour fan? How do they view golfers? How do they view our next set of stars? What are the drivers of that? We're going to be looking very closely at how we present the product. It's always traditionally been on television, what we call linear television, which is the old way a lot of us would turn on the TV and watch it. But that's not really how it works these days. It's
Right.
changing. So how do we present that? What are the things like pace of play? For example, one of the big things we've heard about is, how it's presented on TV. Do I really want to see players walking around a green staring at a 3-foot putt for, 45 seconds?
Mhm.
Looking at all of our other platforms, looking at new formats, new ideas. So it's going to be pretty exciting, and I think as we learn about this, I really do think we'll have some great findings that will filter out to the world of the PGA professional as well. We were with some of your colleagues from the PGA of America last week talking about this. And so, it's going to be an open book. This isn't going to be something we find that we're not going to share. We want to learn and try to make the PGA Tour better, which I think will make everybody on this call give them a better opportunity to do their jobs each day as well.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely is the world's changing, right? And we've got to keep up just like everybody else. And it's not just sit down for 4 hours on a weekend and watch golf. I mean, that still is an option, and but there are so many other ways to enjoy any sporting event, not just golf.
Yeah, it's
So
and not to interrupt you, but just to put a
yeah.
little context on it for everyone on the phone, our traditional telecasts, which are not just in the United States, but in over 200 countries around the world. If you knew that even there were 200 countries, but that is happening every week, and we're still, we're seeing a great audience retention there, but less and less people are watching that. However, the amount of video streaming, whether it's on YouTube, social media, is just skyrocketing. Our streaming product here in the US, which is on ESPN Plus, has far exceeded anyone's, beliefs about what that would do. So you're seeing this kind of crazy moment here
Yeah.
where things are changing rapidly and people want to consume it, but they want to consume it in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to touch on, you talked about the relationship with the PGA Tour, the PGA of America. I think it's important for our members to know, even from a financial standpoint. I mean, the PGA Tour is our largest partner, financially speaking. So it's important for our professionals to know that, and I know I don't want to get into the weeds of the agreement, what that looks like, but a lot of that is based on the participation numbers that we see at our section championship and our PPC qualifiers, and we're the beneficiaries of that. So number one, thank you. We appreciate the support and the collaboration of the two associations, and again, it's important for our professionals to know that trickles down to us, and that goes back into activities and tournament purses that we conduct, here at the local level. So thank you for
Yeah.
that and wanted to point that out.
Well, and thank you because yeah, as you said, we're proud of that and we want that to be the case. The sponsorship that we're able to do at the national level that I know flows, to the sections, and then just also the support we get in running qualifying, running Q schools, and
Mhm.
how that works financially. But it's really important to us because as I said earlier, the everyone on this call and all of our colleagues are, sort of the stewards of the game at the local level and at all the clubs and facilities that you're at. And that's where our fan base is. And so, the success of the PGA Tour is directly connected to everybody. So we're proud of that. And I think, I feel strongly in saying that we're going to only make that stronger over the years to come. I know that the leadership of the PGA of America, the board of directors, we have a great relationship, and this is something that's a big focus for the PGA Tour. We want to make sure that we are closely connected to the PGA of America and that we can help build and take things to the next level.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you. Let's talk about a little bit of an elephant in the room with the Genesis. That's here in our backyard, and unfortunately, the area, the golf course itself is fine. Obviously, quite a bit of damage. They've had some trees down and other damage, from the high winds that we saw, but no fire damage, which is great. But the area around it is, I mean, could probably call it a war zone, honestly. So I think, definitely the right decision was made. I don't know how you can, pull first responders and all those folks, that we would need at the event at a time like this. And so anyway, the right decision was made. I'm so glad wasn't part of that. That would be a tough one. And then I know there's still decisions, being made and conversations being had. I know you can't go into that. But if you could just maybe share what you can, maybe the thought process that went into making that decision, and the challenges that you and your team are going to face regardless of where it is moved.
Yeah. No, thank you. And as I said, I mean, first and foremost, ever since the emergency began, we've just been in a observational mode trying to help. And obviously our PJ Tour family, and that's players, that's sponsors, that's our media
Yep.
partners, that's our fans. We've all just been, thinking about it, and our hearts have been going out to it. Yeah, I think everyone may have seen yesterday. We made an announcement. We've been in close contact with Riviera Country Club, the ownership there, and Jim Richardson, who everyone knows as a
Mhm.
PGA member. And in collaboration between the PGA Tour, Riviera, the Tiger Woods Foundation, and Genesis, the sponsor, we collectively determined that it's just not. Unfortunately, we're not able to play there this year, and so we're working on. Where we're going to play. We absolutely are going to have the tournament, and we're very, very focused on making it all about providing the relief, providing a platform. As in the post, sort of fire situation ending. And so more news to come on that, I think in the next few days. But we want it to be about California. We want it to be about the tragedy and so forth. But like I say, the great team at Riviera there, we just our hearts go out to everything in that part of Los Angeles, and we'll miss Riviera this year, but we'll be back better than ever in the future, and we are gonna play the event. More to come on that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So let's talk about, you're in La Quinta as we speak at La Quinta Country Club, I believe you said. Share with us what you can about putting on an event like this, where you're at three different facilities. What does that look like from your team standpoint, volunteer standpoint, just logistics? Very curious on that. So
Yeah.
whatever you can share. What is that? How does this week differ from sort of a traditional tour stop?
Yeah, sure. I mean, probably most people on the phone are very familiar with this. We've been We've been coming to the Coachella Valley for, I'm not even sure what the number is, but a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And this tournament really is just, on an incredible trend line right now. American Express has really just reinvigorated the event in a great way. We've got an incredible amateur field, and I feel like this tournament is really on the map again. It is complicated with the three courses and the pro am, but between the two venues at PGA West and then La Quinta Country Club, where I am right now, it's a great machine. It's different. We only have a couple pro ams now on the PGA Tour. We have this one and the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro Am, which many of you are familiar with. And yeah, they're fun weeks. They're very unique. And a lot of history, a lot of the same faces. So we love being here. Just in general, to your question, like the PGA Tour is in a good way kind of a monster these days. Like the amount of stuff, for lack of a better term,
Yeah.
that goes on into an event is incredible because we're broadcasting this thing in 200 plus countries. As I said, we have 43 media partners. So we're here in the US, and we're used to watching Golf Channel, CBS, NBC, but there's 43 other partners around the world. And between that and the way we distribute our data, ShotLink, all of the sort of complexity of everything, it's a real kind of circus coming to town. And
Hmm.
but the output of it is that it's really exciting. And on a slight kind of tangent, to tie this together, everyone may have seen an announcement about something called PJ Tour Studios recently. And this was, if you didn't see it, you can go online and check it out. But we've just opened a new facility that's in Florida at our offices where TPC Sawgrass is. But it's really kind of the new future hub for how we distribute golf around the world. So as technologies improved, a lot of the broadcast and data functions that used to go on site in a trailer or a mobile unit or something now actually can be done remotely. So it's evolved a lot, but it's really complicated. And then the heart of it, it's still exactly what everyone on this call does. We still got a golf tournament going on, so all the stuff we're all familiar with, nothing changes about that, and the inside the ropes. But it's a fascinating evolution to see the how the circus has grown and evolved outside the ropes.
Yeah, I bet. I bet. And we're excited for one of our own who's competing this week, Kyle Mendoza, who's our section champion. And we thank you and we thank the Amex for providing that exemption into the event for our section champion. It's been a longstanding agreement, and it's just such a special week for Kyle and his family. And he had struggled a little bit yesterday on the stadium course, so he's out at the country club today, and hopefully can
Yeah.
make a lot of birdies out there today. But we appreciate that exemption. The Farmers Insurance Open still provides us an exemption as well for our Player of the Year. So again, just speaks to that partnership and collaboration that we have. And then we've got one of our former employees who's now on your team, Rob Keller, who's a rules official. Max Despain also works for
Yeah.
you. I don't think he's there this week, but we're super proud of the fact that our last two tournament directors and director of competitions are now working for the PGA Tour, and that was their career goal. So super proud of that, and hopefully they're doing a nice job for you.
And
Let's talk about you.
I want to jump in there because
Yeah.
both are fantastic additions. And actually, just for everyone on the call, we have a really great contingent of employees of the PGA Tour from across a lot of PGA sections.
Mhm.
Many of our rules officials have come from different sections, folks that work with us in other functions, and it just goes to show you that the professionalism of the way that sections run their events. all the things that you do on the section level. It's really no different than the PGA Tour. You know, we have members. They're just the kind of best golfers in the world, and you have members as well, and we all run tournaments. So really love all of those team members. And you mentioned Rob and Max, and I just saw Rob not too long ago here. So it's fun to have that connection, and nice to have them here in their hometown. The other thing on a different topic that you mentioned, I just
Mhm.
want to address is the PGA section exemption. There was some media reports that as part of the changes I talked about earlier, that might be being considered to be going away, and that's not something that we ultimately, our board, decided to do. I mean, that's an important part of the relationship to PGA of America. We know how important that is, so just wanted to address that head on, that was not something that ended up being changed. So I'm glad that we
Yeah,
can continue to have that important connection.
for sure. Thank you for that. Let's talk about your role. You know, are you out there every week? Are you at every tour event? What does a typical week look for you? What is your role this week? And then are you already planning for for next week? You know,
Yeah.
just
Yeah. Well, I know it's great. I mean, I've worked at the PGA Tour for 24 years now, and I'm originally from Salt Lake City, Utah, but lived in Northern California for some time. Of course, I've lived in Florida now most of my working life. That's where the PGA Tour is headquartered. But my
right,
role is to oversee all the tournaments. So, the way I describe it is sort of both the inside the ropes part, which, as I was saying a minute ago, is all the things we're all very familiar with on this call, the sort of rules officials and tournament admin, agronomy, and the kind of nuts and bolts of running a set of golf tournaments. And then the outside the ropes part as well, with how we interact with the organization that runs each tournament. We generally have a third party run each event, and so there's a very deep relationship that many of you would be familiar with. And then we have the sponsors. So it's a big role. I'm out most weeks. You can't go out every week. You'd go nuts. You'd never
right,
go home, and your family would hate you. but
right.
but we're out often, and I'm out here. I got out here a couple days ago. I'll stay here, go over to Torrey Pines and be there for a couple days. So it's been a real honor. It's been a lot of fun. I originally actually started in the kind of competition world. I was one of the rules officials, and so over the years, way back, used to be running Q schools and things with, I'm sure, some people on the phone here and so forth. So it's been a fun career. It's a great kind of family atmosphere, but it's a little bit of everything. And in recent years, we've had all kinds of unexpected things happen. So um, but I'm honored to be part of it.
Awesome. Sounds like a fun job. Do you get a chance to play much yourself?
Not really. I hardly ever play. I'm not I'm a variable. That's probably the right word to use right now. But I love golf, and I'm hoping to play a lot more as the years go on. So that's kind of how it's one of my very favorite things to do.
Yeah, great. So we'll end in sort of a rapid fire then, Tyler.
Yeah.
Favorite golf course?
Oh, well, this is kind of risky on this call, but
I
I'll
know.
answer it. I'll answer it a different way. That I love all of our West Coast events. And
Mhm.
personally, in my heart, I went to Stanford, so I have a real connection to Pebble Beach and Riviera. God bless it right now with what's going on. Those are sort of my
Yeah.
two favorite places to go every year. So I have a real deep connection to this group on this call.
Well, not bad choices there, and very diplomatic of you to choose a Northern Cal and a Southern Cal facility. So
It
nice
was
job
easy. I'm
there.
not going to try to say
Fa-
which is better, everybody.
Favorite golf memory, whether it was playing or being at an event or meeting someone. Um, what sticks
My
out?
favorite, actually, well, so funny enough, my favorite memories are really when I very first started. I worked on what's now called the Corn Ferry Tour. It was the Nike Tour at the
Mhm.
time, and getting to go to all the places we did, some of which were in these two sections. Those are some of my sort of happiest memories, because you're part of a small group traveling around. you're getting to be, really seeing that next generation of players. And now I look at guys who have, been quite famous and done all these things, and kind of starting at that with them was a lot of fun. So those are my favorite memories in this job.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. All right, final question. Super Bowl prediction, and is your favorite team still in the mix?
Well, I so my team, I guess, is the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I think everybody knows
Assume
where they
that.
stand.
Assume that. Yeah.
So
Sorry.
I'm not sure. I'm gonna say I saw a hat of your next guest. So we'll see what
Yeah.
happens there. I know you guys might have a little rivalry going on. So anyway, that's where I'm at on those questions.
That's great. Well, look, we know you're super busy and got a lot going on. We really appreciate you taking 30 minutes of your day to join us and provide some great insight as to what you do and the relationship that we have, with the PGA Tour and the PGA of America and how that trickles down to the sections. It's just great. So it was a pleasure to have you join us and get to know you, and hopefully our paths will cross in the near future.
Absolutely. Thank you. And please, everyone involved and on the call, don't be a stranger at events, and reach out as we can be helpful. But we really appreciate everything you do for the game and for the tour. So thanks, Nikki. It's been great to be here.
Thanks, Tyler. Have a great day and great rest of the week.
Absolutely. Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay. All right, and with that, thanks so much, Tyler, again. And we have our legislative update. We need to change our opening script. I noticed that. Craig is now the executive director of the California Alliance for Golf, a new position that was created within the Alliance. Remember, the Alliance is really all the major associations in golf in our state. So the two PGA sections, the two amateur bodies, the golf course superintendents, owners, and Craig works on a daily basis to advocate not only for our game, but for all of us that work in the game and enjoy the game. So, Craig, again, congrats on your new position, and thank you for joining us. And I'm sure you've got a lot to update us on.
Thank you, Nikki. And I do have a lot to update, and I am going to eventually get to two issues that have dropped in this legislative session. One, both a California issue, which is at the national level as well, and I'll deal with that second when I get to it, because it's a troubling issue, as most of them. And there is also a very, very positive issue, something we're going to strongly support, which is a California-centric issue. But before I do, I'd like to address what's front and center on everyone's mind, beyond the Washington Commanders, of course, and that is the fires. I'm loath to call them wildfires because they were more urban fires than they were wildfires. It was mostly the buildings that were burnt as a result of embers flying at 100 miles an hour and 5% humidity across that was originally lit by vegetation that was at record levels because of our incredible rains the previous couple of years. Something that Daniel Swain and all the climatologists at UCLA, which is one of the best in the country, have taken to calling hydroclimate whiplash. Now, I'm not going to go into a technical explanation of what that is because I'm not a technical person, but I suffice it to say that what that means is that these wild oscillations that I was going to say enjoying, but we're not enjoying them, where we are going to be getting these atmospheric rivers in some years where we get drenching rains, which then grows all the brush and so forth, and it's wonderful, followed by incredible droughts and dry periods. Apparently, at this point in this particular hydrological year, and every one of them begins in October, it's the driest on record in Southern California. In contrast to Northern California, where it's actually well above average thus far, although they've hit a bit of a dry snag in the last 7 to 10 days, and that's concerning as well for the snowpack longer term. But what that ends up doing when you have a what we had last week was a certain positioning of a low pressure area on the internal and high pressure area where it's not supposed to be, and those winds were generated at close to 100 miles an hour, and it's almost impossible. It's almost guaranteed that we'll end up with a conflagration like we ended up. So what I'd like to do is put that in a little, to sort of explain the importance of that beyond the obvious. We know that there was a golf course that's been, well, the clubhouse was lost, and we don't know the level of the damage to the actual facility itself. It's very easy to drive by a course because turf doesn't burn. Trees do, but turf doesn't burn. But if the heat was significant enough under Altadena, it's very likely that the irrigation system, that the important part of every golf course that's underneath the turf, may have been damaged. I've had some familiarity with this working with the city of Ventura, as they are very, I think very effectively working right now to reopen part of Buenaventura after it flooded 2 years ago, and I think ultimately to refurbish the whole thing. I'm painfully aware, and something I'll throw out there, that whereas they are in the process of accessing FEMA money to do that, I fear that Altadena may not be able to, because in the difference in the two situations is that in Ventura, the flood was not a declared emergency. So the federal relief was available to a golf facility, in this case, one owned by a city. And in Altadena, that may not be the case because of some language that was put into IRS regulations dealing with disaster relief all the way back in 1977, that's been copied and pasted, in which certain categories of businesses are categorically exempt from the receipt of federal largesse or emergency management largesse during declared emergencies such as earthquakes. Most often we've seen this with hurricanes. In fact, this became painfully apparent to the golf industry after Hurricane Katrina, in which no golf courses were able to receive relief. We call that a sin list because golf is listed with other things such as gambling barges and liquor stores and houses of ill repute and various other things. And it's really painful to see golf categorized with those kinds of activities. Supposedly, we've been working on that to change that in Congress, and there's even a couple of bills that have been put in print, but it's been a painfully long, almost 20-year process, and it's very disappointing if not available. On the other hand, we don't know the level of damage. We'll see what happens. But I want to emphasize to everyone that the world changed. We had an insurance problem. We had a supply problem. We had some labor issues. We had cost issues, cost of construction. And I trust that everyone's aware that all of those things just got exacerbated. And of course, not to mention the backdrop of a housing shortage, which we should be aware of because we spent in recent years fending off a couple of bills that would have tried to provide subsidies to developers to chop courses like Altadena, which is municipally owned by LA County, into housing complexes. So that's going to set our housing shortage further back. So I suppose, and it's also going to bring into play a tension that suffuses so many things that where golf and public policy meet, and that's a tension between an increasing desire, a bipartisan desire to bypass certain environmental regulation, building regulations, and so forth, in favor of just simply solving problems. And very strong environmental community in California opposes this. And so you're seeing those kinds of tensions, even at the level of fighting forest fires. There's some legislation being sponsored by some California Democrats that would help out that are being opposed. So just want to point out to you, not to give you a political slant, but just part of the increasing tension I think you're going to see in some of the other things when we talk about water and other issues, an increasing sort of rift between even our governor and environmental communities and so forth. So with that, and with the notion, I don't want to minimize for a moment. Right now, we're dealing with the persons who have lost homes, and I know people who have lost homes. I'm sure many listening to me know people who have lost homes. but there are those who have lost homes, those who are evacuated, those who have lost jobs, and not just in the golf industry, but in the restaurant industry and all sorts of other things. So all of this is going to have an enormous impact once that settles out. And once we get back into some of the things we saw during COVID, where you get, rent increase moratoria and various other things. So it's just when things were looking a little bit more stable, this exacerbated quite a bit of the problem. And this will be with us for a long, long time after those homes are rebuilt and people get back into their jobs and so forth. And so, and as far as the lives lost, clearly there's no replacement for that. That's a permanent loss. So let me move on into more mundane matters, in that we are in a new legislative year, a new legislative session. And I'm going to start with the good news. First, I'm going to refresh your memories. Last year, the California Municipal Utilities Association sponsored a bill that was run by State Senator Ana Caballero, who is the chair of the Appropriations Committee, and that means something in both the Assembly and the Senate. That is a very powerful person. That is even a person that governors pay closer attention to than they may with others, because they hold in their hands the ability to greenlight legislation after it passes their house of origin, or to kill it. And I think and that's a very, very interesting process for those who involve themselves in our state capitol. And the bill was very simple. It was, for the first time in history of California, putting targets on supply of water. Now, you may find that surprising, because there are 81 separate targets for all kinds of things. So those who work in the golf industry are aware that we have deadlines and targets for elimination of all kinds of gas-powered equipment, the elimination of a lot of practices dealing with certain non-organic inputs and that. And you may be surprised that with water being an issue that is probably the number one issue, particularly in the southern part of the state, this would be the first target. And it would also set a target that by 2050 would result in 9 million acre-feet of more supply in total. Now, this bill passed both houses. We strongly, the golf industry, California Alliance for Golf, and all the constituent organizations worked with CMUA and strongly supported this bill, because clearly, and I want to be very careful to point out that we have always honored the fact, and will continue to honor the fact, that conservation is a source of supply. Every drop not used is a drop that goes into the supply bucket. And I think golf has an exemplary record in reducing its water footprint and contributing to that key measure of supply. It's just that our position is sort of the same position as most water providers, water districts, and public utilities in the state. It can't be the only measure of supply, or California is not going to be able to support the 5th largest economy in the world, and not going to be able to support recreational amenities like golf at a clip of 1,000 facilities in the state. So, so other measures of supply, not just the above surface reservoirs, but aquifer recharge, stormwater capture, desalination in San Diego County, all those sorts of things, and even recognizing that those things are disproportionately paid for by ratepayers, although we will always support having those things paid for in the collective. We still move with it because we recognize it's central to our long-term sustainability in the state. But having said that, very supportive. The governor vetoed it last year. And those of you who read, whether it's the SCGA Public Affairs updates or the new California Alliance for Golf newsletter, which I started back in August, will know that we sort of gave the governor we sort of explained it, that Governor Newsom, it may come as a surprise to some of you listening if you read headlines or listen to certain news stations, that has bucked the environmental community on supporting the construction of the site's reservoir, which is an important component of supply, and probably more importantly, has been a strong supporter of the Delta conveyance plan and some of you may recognize it as the single tunnel plan. And that has upset, and SB 366, the bill I'm referring to last year that the governor vetoed, some of the environmentalists feared that 9 million acre feet of extra supply would come straight out of the Sacramento Delta. We believe that amendments adopted at the last minute obviated all possibility. Nonetheless, you'll have to forgive a politician. Environmentalists and environmental organizations are a key component of the Democratic coalition and Governor Newsom's coalition. And it's sort of like if you upset on two, not three. We predicted as a result of that, this bill would come back, and it has come back. The new number is 72. Easier to remember. I was told last night, just remember that's an even par round of golf at most places. Grace, of course, that I don't shoot even par rounds, but I'm going to guess that many people listening actually do have hopes of even shooting better than that when they tee it up. So golf will strongly support that. And I can tell you that SCGA Public Affairs Director Kevin Fitzgerald and I are scheduled to meet with the senator's staff next week on this, because we're going to be in Sacramento meeting with an actual state senator. We're going to meet with some others as well, and some sort of informal meetings with key staffers that we know, and with some new committee chairs that we're going to be introduced to. And that's the second piece of legislation I want to deal with, which is a little bit more distressing. Again, for those of you who really laser follow this stuff, know that last year there was a bill that successfully got through the state Senate. Its number was 1413. I usually mess up these numbers, but I actually remember that one. And it was sponsored by Senator Roger Niello. I may have screwed up. Niello, we'll just use the last name, whose district is mostly in Rockland, Roseville, all the way up to Auburn, but not North Auburn, as I discovered. The Ridge Golf Course is technically in another district. And that would have put California permanently on standard time, no daylight savings time. Let me explain a little bit. There is a movement, there are those who strongly believe that changing the clocks twice per year causes disruption, medical disruption. It puts everyone sort of at the same time on a 1 hour jet lag. There's some issues. I don't profess to understand all the reasons. As I've read those reasons, I don't personally find them compelling, but others do. Initially, the response to that was to promote full-time daylight savings time, which clearly would probably be good for the golf industry. I'll tell you, we never supported that because there were some issues and some objection to kids going to school in the winter in the dark, and we just didn't. We felt the status quo served our interests just fine. Stick with it. We don't want to. That's one of the calculations in determining what to do and what not to do in the public square. Is we want to keep the reputation of golf good. We don't want to upset too many people when pursuing these things. But it turns out that the way this works, that the federal government has preempted the issue, Congress that is, in the following way. It establishes states may elect to stay standard time year-round at their discretion, or elect to change the clocks twice a year. If they elect to change the clocks, they must be changed in exactly the same way in each state that does it. To go to permanent daylight time would require a specific waiver from Congress or the federal government. That's not in the cards for California or any other state, although there are other states that have floated bills like this. So in response to trying to eliminate the changing of the clocks, Senator Niello, I don't know who was in his ear, decided we could easily go to standard time just by passing a bill and having the governor sign it here, and we'd be rid of it. We opposed it for reasons I'm sure everyone on this call understands. It would be a substantial hit to the bottom line of golf courses, losing that hour of time. Gaining it in the morning is not that valuable. There are no before morning golf leagues. There's no before morning twilight play. And even in the California desert or the Coachella Valley, where routine is you get to a certain part of year, everyone starts, tees it up when the sun's just coming out to avoid the heat of the day. That would move it back an hour. That would move maintenance back an hour. Employees would have to would have to get up early. And then, of course, in urban areas, there are so many noise ordinances that already interfere with the ability to open up golf courses. You can see it would be exacerbated. So we were watching to see whether Senator Niella would float that bill again. It died in the Assembly, in large part because some Assembly Democrats didn't think it was a very good idea, and it was, and the chair of the Committee of Reference amended it into a 3-year study, and Senator Niello said, "I'll just pull the bill and float it again next year. That's almost meaningless." Something, though, happened on December 13th. President-elect Trump, who will be President Trump at noon on Monday, tweeted on December 13th that standard time was not only was a smart thing to do economically and otherwise, but that the Republican Party supported that. Well, I don't know whether that's true or not, but he is the leader of the Republican Party. He's about to be inaugurated president. Republicans, by a narrow margin, control the House of Representatives, and by a somewhat less narrow margin, the U.S. Senate. How serious that is, I don't know. But when the President of the United States says something is important, we have to regard it as important. Well, that gave life back to this idea within California. And so we are going to meet with the senators, who I strongly suspect has no idea, despite our opposition last year, we mostly dealt with it in the Assembly, not so much the Senate, that probably has no idea of the economic damage this was caused to golf. My guess is there are other sectors that would be damaged, and we may see some activity, and we'll discover some allies. But at a national look, keep in mind that were Congress to do what President Trump suggested, we would be preempted. All 50 states would be on standard time. There would be no discretion. So our position is just leave things the way they are. And by the way, the way they are, there are states which stay to standard time, and one of them is Arizona, our neighbor. And so they're free. They would be free to do this under our position. We don't want to upset their ability to control their clocks the way they want to control their clocks. Anyway, so at a national level, I can say that there's been, I hope that the American Golf Industry Coalition, which has not always been particularly nimble in these kinds of things, I sense that I believe at the PGA of America level, we'll see, that remains to be seen, but certainly at the level even now of the amateur associations, and I think the owners associations, we may sort of gin up and make clear on National Golf Day, even if it's not enrolled in a bill at that time. And even though this is the kind of thing that doesn't have very high possibility of, it has no ability really as a standalone bill to get through the House of Representatives, but it could be tagged on to a budget trailer or something like that as part of it. I think it would be important to let legislators know this is what it's about. When sometimes people get nervous about politics, just letting them know what's good or bad for your particular sector and why that is, fully respectful that there are other sectors that have other ideas, and we'll leave that up to them. And in the play and in the sort of play of those different sectors and those different interests, things ultimately, I think can work out. So we'll see. So even though yours truly here is often stated that a little bit of frustration that there's so much focus at National Golf Day and in golf organizations on the national, when I know that most everything is local, regional, and state that affects golf courses, increasingly there are now some issues that really do go to the national level increasingly. But that reminds me a little bit of 8-10 years ago, I used to say that for the most part, even in Sacramento, there was not that much that affected golf. But boy, has that not been true in the last 5 or 6 years. There have been a whole lot of things out of Sacramento that affect golf. And I think it's one of the reasons, as Nikki alluded to at introducing me, that the California Alliance for Golf has decided to take sort of a step up and a step forward. I think it needs to take quite a few more steps, but if I can if I can participate in laying a foundation for those steps, I think I will have done a great deal with that. So let me simply, I'm going to close a couple of minutes early and maybe even know if I've raised some questions, or maybe Nikki will got some questions out of it, or I ginned up Caitlin. I'll simply conclude by saying this, and I'll tag on to Nikki's initial comment about the California Alliance of Golf and some of my comments about that. The golf industry got too lucky for too long, for much of its history. It was buoyed by public investment that it never acknowledged. I mean, the market got built up to close to 30 million golfers, really, because governments throughout this country, but mostly at the local level, but also at the state level in some places in the Northeast, decided to build golf courses for average working people, use it just the way they build parks and baseball fields and so forth. It may come as a surprise because that's not the ethic so much today, in large part because of the success. Coming out of World War II for a long period of time, and golf boomed for many, many years. We had an exploding and expanding middle class, and golf's a bit of an aspirational game, and more wanted to play it. So with all of that, and then this incredible run from 1946 for the next 60 years through 2005, golf was alone in being the only recreational sector that grew each one of those years, each one of them. Now, I'm old enough to have lived through the 1970s where we had high unemployment and high inflation and interest rates. I mean, I kind of laugh at young people who talk about inflation today. And I came out of college and the prime rate was over 17%. So consider that and put it in a little bit of context. We got through it and we survived and it came back down, but there was a lot of pain to it. So when we expanded and we were due for a correction around 2004, 2005, that's a market screaming for correction, we didn't handle it very well. We floundered because unlike and one of the ways we floundered was in the recognition that a sector that's as large as golf is in California, as popular as it is and as many adherents as it has, never built into the business plans as in similarly sized and situated sectors, was this whole notion that you better take care of business in Washington, D.C. and Sacramento and planning commissions and halls of administration. So it's very difficult when you're not, it's easy to ramp up something that you're doing, very difficult to start. But if nothing else, this audience listening to the last 5 or 6 years, with 2 runs of public golf endangerment acts, we successfully beat those, with all of the issues dealing with independent contracting, with last year's bill that would have prohibited the use of all fertilizers and pesticides in the California coastal zone, to various smaller bills of which you're unaware, dealing with prescriptions on neonicotinoids and glyphosate and various other things, to this even now sort of a more mundane issue in daylight savings time. Let me suggest those things are going to be coming faster and faster and faster. And there are going to probably be some things of an emergency nature going back to the housing issue that are going to come back in different forms, maybe not as public golf endangerment acts. So this is my closing plea that as much as I'm really happy that the organizations in the state have decided to ramp up this statewide effort, I know working in it every day, it's we've been lucky to win some of these things, and luck is not a good long-term strategy. So we need to do, we're doing better, but we need to even do better than that. And with that, I'm going to yield the floor here 2 minutes before 11 o'clock and write it down, Nikki. It can happen.
Duly noted.
Thank you,
and
Craig.
in the minutes. Thanks, Craig.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Craig, as usual, for keeping us informed. And I'm going to close this out actually today. So appreciate all of that. And there was a lot to report on. So obviously today, you know, it's cool to see we have about 115 people on. So just wanted to shout that out and say, you know, I mean, probably leading up to the PDR cycle is, you know, obviously done in June this year. So we have a great lineup for you over the next 5-6 months to get your PDRs kind of to get to that deadline. So just a housekeeping item, our next chat will be on February 21st, Friday, February 21st, and we're going to have the Chief Technology Officer from the PGA, Kevin Scott, and then Kelly Williams, who's the club manager of Greenbrier Country Club. And they're going to be talking about AI. So it'll be very interesting, very timely, and see how we can use AI to help all of us at our clubs. So just a FYI for that. If you're traveling to the PGA show, please be safe and travel safe. And then if you called in today as well and you're on the phone, please report back to your section so we can get you guys your PDR credits. So thank you all for being here. Thanks for your time. Nikki, anything else?
I think that's it. Thanks for a great first chat to lead us off in the new year. And again, let's keep all those affected by the fires in our thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.